He was just 6 years old, bright-eyed, blonde-haired, excited for his first day walking to the school bus stop, all by himself. But Etan Patz never made it to school. He never made it back home, and his face became the first missing child on a milk carton. What happened to Etan Patz would change America forever. This is not just a mystery. This is a movement. Welcome to Captain Justice True Stories. Subscribe because justice is coming. It was the morning of May 25, 1979, in SoHo, Manhattan. Etan Patz, 6 years old, had been begging his parents to let him walk to the bus stop on his own. It was only 2 blocks away. Other kids did it. He was ready. That Friday, his mother, Julie Patz, finally agreed. Etan grabbed his lunchbox, put on his blue jeans and a black Future Flight Captain cap, and set off at 8 a.m. Julie watched from the apartment window. Her son vanished from view as he turned the corner. She never saw him again. When Etan didn't come home from school that afternoon, his mother panicked. She called the school. They said he was absent all day. By 3:30 p.m., police were called. By sunset, every available NYPD officer, neighbor, and volunteer was scouring the streets of Lower Manhattan. Dogs searched alleys. Helicopters hovered above rooftops. The city had seen missing kids before, but never like this. Etan Patz had vanished into thin air. Etan wasn't just any child. He was photogenic. His face was expressive, sad, and smiling at once. A few months earlier, a friend of his father, a professional photographer, had taken portraits of Etan for fun. Those photos would soon appear on posters, TV, newspapers, and milk cartons. Etan became the symbol of missing children in America. But behind that image was a family unraveling. Etan's parents, Julie and Stan Patz, were devoted, intelligent, and heartbroken. Stan worked as a professional photographer. Julie was a science teacher. They never stopped searching. For decades, they refused to change their phone number, hoping Etan might call. They never moved from their apartment. Etan's room was left untouched for years. They spoke to the media, joined advocacy groups, and kept the pressure on investigators. But weeks turned to months, and then years, and still no trace of Etan. Very early in the investigation, a name came up: Jose Ramos, a drifter and convicted child molester who had once dated Etan's babysitter. When questioned, Ramos admitted that on the day Etan vanished, he had taken a young boy back to his apartment, given him lunch, and put him on a subway. He insisted the boy wasn't Etan, but he later told a fellow inmate, "I'm sure it was the child I took that day." In 2004, Stan Patz filed a civil lawsuit against Ramos. A judge ruled Ramos was responsible for Etan's disappearance, in a civil, not criminal, capacity. But there was no body, no forensic evidence, no arrest. Ramos was released from prison in 2012, and the Patz family still had no closure. By the mid-1980s, the case had gone cold. But Etan's legacy was just beginning. Public pressure grew. People were angry. Kids were disappearing across the U.S., but there was no national system in place. Etan's story led to the creation of the Missing Children Act, 1982, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, 1984, the milk carton campaigns, placing faces of missing kids on everyday items. Etan became the face of a generation lost and remembered. In 2010, the Manhattan District Attorney reopened the case. 2 years later, in 2012, police began digging in the basement of a handyman named Othniel Miller, who had once worked in the Patz family's building. They found bones, but they turned out to be from an animal. Another dead end. Then came a tip from a man named Pedro Hernandez, a mentally ill former bodega clerk who had something to confess. Pedro Hernandez was a teenager in 1979. He worked at a bodega near Etan's bus stop. In 2012, he told police that he had lured Etan into the basement with the promise of a soda, then strangled him and disposed of the body in a bag, in the garbage. It was shocking, detailed, emotional, but also questionable. There was no physical evidence, no witnesses, and Hernandez had a history of mental illness and hallucinations. Still, police believed him. Pedro Hernandez was arrested in 2012. In 2015, his first trial ended in a hung jury. One juror held out, citing reasonable doubt. In 2017, after a second trial, he was found guilty of kidnapping and murder. He was sentenced to 25 years to life. But many still wonder, was this justice or a desperate closure? Stan and Julie Patz were not present in court for the verdict. They had spent nearly 40 years living in hell. This was not a celebration, it was a quiet end. May 25th, the day Etan disappeared, is now recognized as National Missing Children's Day in the United States. Etan's case led to the Amber Alert System, centralized databases for missing kids, a greater public awareness. His story changed how America thinks about child safety. He became a symbol not of loss but of action.